socks I wouldn't be seen dead in these days, but they were huge in the late 80s, early 90s in the UK. The Nike Air Max 1s that really popped this year have a little bit of extra in them, and that's where I like to sit. That's a sweet spot for my channel. That's just where I like to be. You know, I did a video the other day about the Adidas X9000 L4, and what I said about that was it's a shoe that I wouldn't have stopped on. I check out a lot of shoes to choose which one I'm going to bring to you every single day, and I try and find the ones that interest me as much as may interest you, stuff that's going to be interesting coming down the line. Maybe it's unique in some way, so you know, I'm trying to find the right shoe every single day, and that X9000 L4, I just wouldn't have stopped on it, but when I saw it on Sneaker News, they actually said Nike X9000 L4 instead of Adidas X9000 L4, and I was like, ooh, what's going on there? Have Nike ripped off Adidas? Blah, 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 blah. So that's why I dove into that shoe. That's why I chose that shoe. And the same thing kind of happened with this today. I really wouldn't have stopped on it. It's a bit gimmicky for my liking, and I hope people out there aren't offended. In fact, if you are offended, tell me in the comments down below, because we're all about sharing opinions, differences of opinions as much as same opinions at this channel. So, but you know, like, it's a bit gimmicky, it's a bit colourful. It's not really my vibe, but there's that one little hit on right at the front near the quarter line on the sort of lateral side of the toe box, and I was like, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what that's all about. So I had a little look in and looked in more detail at the shoe. I was like, oh, you know what, there's an awful lot more going on in this shoe, and that's why I chose to look at today the upcoming release of the Nike Air Max 1 Hyper Pink. This is the Tokyo Butter 23 Sneaker channel. Tokyo Butter 23 Sneaker channel des. Meine Chapsuru no de. Meine to me to get a sign. Every single day I do videos about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news and sneaker reviews. And today is this upcoming release of the Nike Air Max 1 Hyper Pink. And I think we're talking about September the 12th. I'm shooting this video on September the 1st. It'll probably go up onto the channel September 3rd or 4th. So roughly a week in advance. And that's where I like to sit. That's a sweet spot for my channel. That's just where I like to be. Is about a week before the drops, bringing you guys information about what's coming down the line, and then hopefully you guys use that information and say, you know what, I'm going to get that shoe, or I'm going to stay off of that, didn't realize about some of the details on there. So we're going to be doing that today. We'll be looking into this shoe with that kind of vibe in mind. And speaking of vibes, I'm finding it hard not to reminisce, not to flow back, you know, 30 odd years. It might look like I'm massively ancient, and maybe 44 is massively ancient, but you know, 30 odd years ago, I was in my, you know, teens, late 80s, early 90s vibe, and these colors, these vibrant fluorescent colors were massive at the time. We're talking fluorescent socks. Let's have a look at some fluorescent socks. And in the UK, I don't know about the rest of the world, and I'd love to hear about the rest of the world, what was going on around your neck of the woods, late 80s, early 90s. But in the UK, these kind of fluorescent socks, but ankle socks, not like, you know, pulling it up your shin socks. We're talking like low sort of ankle hugger socks in a sort of fuzzy, furry sort of material. They were like the latest thing. Pink, light red, like these bright volt red, greens, massively fluorescent, sort of bright, shiny socks. I wouldn't be seen dead in these days, but they were huge in the late 80s, early 90s in the UK. Also, this kind of thing. Now, I don't think this t-shirt itself is from the 80s or 90s. I think it's a bit after that. But that vibe, white t-shirt with massively overly coloured fronts on them. There was a particular comedian in the UK called Harry Enfield, and he had a character called Loads of Money in the 80s, you know, 90s, and I remember his t-shirts, Loads of Money, with these like bright popping colours off of them, and it was that was the vibe of the time. So when I looked at these guys, these Hyper Pinks, it was the first thing I thought of as soon as I saw all that pink and volt and blue and bright popping colours. It was the first thing I thought was the 80s and 90s. Now I'm told that apparently what they were going for in this shoe was a beach vibe, not a retro vibe, but all I felt when I looked at these guys was the retro 80s and 90s vibe. So let's get into it today. You can tell me in the comments down below what you think of the shoe. Maybe you're from the same generation as me and you're kind of feeling the same sort of flashback to the late 80s, early 90s that I'm feeling. Or maybe you're just more interested in this shoe because of what it stands for right now in this current time and that beach vibe. And we're going to start with one of the signature features on the shoe, and then we'll go through some of the other detailing on it. But this right here, as soon as I saw that, I thought it was a bottle cap, you know, like a screw-on plastic bottle cap. And I zoomed in on it. It was actually, I was reading somewhere about it, and it said it's a floaty. And I'm like, I don't know what the word floaty means. I literally had to Google floaty, and it turned out to be like, you know, an inflatable ring that you'd have in the pool or at the beach. Now, maybe in other countries, floaty is a word, but in the UK, not a word that I'd ever come across. But apparently it's a floaty, and it's meant to, you know, represent that sort of whole kind of beach vibe or poolside vibe. I don't know if putting this kind of thing on the laces, hanging them off the laces, is a thing in other countries. In the UK, we just didn't do it. We didn't really hang stuff off of our laces, except for Grolsch beer bottle caps. That was a big thing for a while in about the mid-90s, I think it was. So when I saw this, I was kind of confused by it. First thought bottle cap, then read that it's a floaty. I guess it's that beach vibe, you know, maybe it sort of rings more true to people out in other countries, in the US, for example. Let me know in the comments down below for sure. And then the other signature, if we go along from that, I said already, I talked about that little hit of detailing round about the quarter line, just on the lateral side of the toe box there, which adds a little bit to the shoe. Now that for me is where the Nike Air Max 1s are this year. The Nike Air Max 1s that really pop this year have a little bit of extra in them. And the ones that are just sort of standard silhouettes, they kind of just sort of murmur along and don't really take much heat. What I'm talking about is like here, right here, that's the anniversary pack, the two shoes spliced together into one. And it was just, you know, your standard Air Max 1 silhouette. Nothing special, colouring on it in standard ways, nothing at all really special. But when I want to contrast against that, I want something to put up against that that says, you know, this was standard and this right here is fire. And this is my favourite Air Max 1 of recent times, is the Amsterdam London pack, which was a beautiful silhouette, the standard silhouette with just a few little hits on there to raise it above. And the same goes for these guys right here, the Sneakers Day 2020 August 8th special edition pack, again with some special heat on there to just raise it above. And today's shoe, it has that. Like I say, the hang tag is one part of that, but then this little hit of colour, this little hit of sort of pop-in fluorescent colour right about the quarter line on the toe box, on the lateral side. It's what drew me into this shoe. It's what made me come in and have a closer look, and I'm glad I did, because there's a bit more into this shoe. So you've got that little swoosh, a little bit of colour around the quarter line that you wouldn't normally see on a shoe on an Air Max 1, and that's that extra little bit that I'd like to see these shoes have. So so staying in that there, we'll go out a little bit and stay on that lower sort of panel that wraps around the shoe there, because that's patent leather, and that's a major feature on this shoe for me. Again, it's unusual to see that. The silhouette, yes, very standard, but those actual materials on this shoe is kind of unusual to see that. And then I saw a particular picture, and I hope it really shows up on the green screen here, but if you go back a little bit and look at the quarter line, you can see that yellow quarter line running across the top, but the texture of it looks just a little bit different from the sort of standard, say, suede, for example. It looks like it's got a bit more character to it, a bit more sort of texture in there. So another kind of key feature to hold this shoe together. And then we travel back up from there, and we'll go have a look at the tongues, which are kind of bog standard. There's nothing major going on there, but it's when we go past the tongues and have a look into the insole, you've got this real kind of 80s vibe again. I don't know if we want to say beach vibe or 80s vibe, like I said, or early 90s or whatever, but it certainly is that vibe for me. And then when I looked at the heel on these guys, I was kind of like, you know, there's something interesting about them. Is it the size of the text, or is it the fonts they've used, or is it the way they've threaded it, you know, into the shoe? It just felt like it was a bit different to usual Air Max 1s for me, but I couldn't really put my finger on what it was. If you guys know for sure, let me know in the comments down below what you think of the heel, and if there's something in particular about it that's unique or new. Speaking of unique or new, let's have a look at the outsole as the final place to stop on this shoe, because this is very, very popping. We're talking blue, light blue and pink, so it's just honouring the colourway above. Sometimes they throw a very simple outsole on a shoe like this, and it makes you feel like, why didn't you just follow through to the very end? Why did you just, you know, take the outsole as well and go fire on that? And that's what they've definitely done here, and that element of translucence that wraps around it, and the light blue elements as well, just kind of gives it again that great feel and finishes off the shoe really nice. So if we come back out looking at the whole shoe, it's the classic Air Max 1 silhouette, definitely not a classic Air Max 1 colorway. There's plenty of extra details and little hits in this that sort of raise it above your sort of bog standard Air Max 1, and that's why I sort of had a look at this guy today. Very happy to reminisce about the 80s and 90s with you guys. Maybe not your generation, maybe is your generation, but for sure it's not a shoe I'm going to be getting. You know, I'm happy to look at it, but it'd be the kind of shoe you'd look at and be like, oh, that's cool, and then you put it straight back on the shelf again. But like I say, for you guys out there, it might be a whole different thing. I hope it is. I hope you enjoy this video, but it's getting late. It's almost midnight here on Tuesday night. I need to get this video tucked away, and like I say, I think it'll probably be Thursday or Friday's video. Can't remember which. But for now, it's time to sign off. Thank you guys for checking out the content, and I'll do what I do at the end of every single video, which is remind you that I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.